united on the ring. It's one of the big stories ahead of the Olympic Winter Games. North and South Korea creating a combined women's hockey team. Two countries still technically at war, according to some, brought together through sport. It's just a sample of the complicated political climate in South Korea, all of it likely sparking questions from you at home about diplomacy at the Olympics. So we want to open up the floor. CBC's Asia correspondent Saša Petricic is in Seoul with answers for us. He joins us for a Q&A, which is also being streamed on Facebook Live and on YouTube. So you can head on over to Facebook, ask your questions in the comments, and we will get them to you and get them to Saša. But let's get started. Hey there, Saša.
Hi there.
So, you know, the relationship between the North and South, pretty intense the past few months. Everyone knows that. How have the games, though, affected that relationship?
Well, on the face of it, you know, the games seem to have come at, I guess, a perfect moment in a way, because here comes this event which puts both of those countries on the spot. They both have to decide how they're going to deal with the games, this big international event, and this complicated, tense relationship they have with each other. The North, in particular, has to decide, are we going to participate in the games? And the South is worried that if the North does not participate, what will it do? In past big sports events, they have launched actual attacks on South Korea, and there have been other events as well. So it's a very tense situation, which could have translated into problems for the games themselves. Instead, what happened was what South Korea certainly figures is the best of all solutions, and that is the North decided that they were going to participate. Not only are they participating in the games, they have agreed to march into the opening ceremonies on Friday together with the South under one flag. They've decided that they're going to participate in a joint women's hockey team, as you mentioned, and a number of other cultural and sports events that will be going on later this week. Taekwondo exhibits, cultural exhibits, singers, dancers, cheering squads. I mean, in many ways, it's really the Peace Olympics that South Korean President Moon Jae-in said that he wanted just a few months ago, but looked so impossible at the time.
Seemingly a positive impact. I mean, you're there, and can you talk to me about, I know that most of the North Korean athletes are in South Korea. Are you seeing that? Are people peaceful? Are you seeing this coming together happening there?
I think I lost your audio, but yeah, I mean, look, South Koreans are not as happy about this as perhaps they should be. There is a feeling here that with all of this that the North is shipping down here, these, as I said, these musicians, these, you know, arts troops, these cheering squads, all of this stuff, that in some ways they are stealing the show from the South, and that this is really nothing more than a huge propaganda effort by the North as they try to, I guess, improve their image internationally, and that the way they're going to do it is to kind of hijack the games. This is the perception of many South Koreans. They're going to hijack the games. They're going to turn the Pyeongchang Olympics into the Pyongyang Olympics, as many people here mentioned, and that's all anybody is going to see out of this stuff. So I think that is the fear that people have. On top of that, many people here, until this whole thing with the North came up and the North's participation in the games, really, most people here were not even paying much attention to the games. So it's a bit of an open question how well received these games are going to be by South Koreans themselves. Many people here still see it as something that's going on way up in the mountains somewhere, and most people that I've spoken to do not actually intend to go there, aside from the fact that they consider it to be way too cold right now.
Okay, we were having some audio issues, but Saša, I believe you can hear me now, because we do have our first question from Facebook. Vincent Foxtrot asks, could this be the first step toward a unified Korea?
Well, that's what a lot of people are hoping. I've been talking to a lot of people, and older South Koreans in particular, who have been dreaming of a country that they remember somewhere in the past, a unified peninsula. They will tell you that this is their sign that things are about to happen, that Korea is going to suddenly become one again. I think there's a long, long way to go before that actually happens. It's extremely complicated because, what they've been talking about so far is how many athletes are we going to send to the Olympics and what's the color of the flag going to be. They're not talking about the really key issues, the military issues, the political issues. There are huge, huge issues in place here. And it's not just the negotiators who would have trouble with that. A lot of Koreans would have trouble with that too, because once you actually start talking to people about what kind of sacrifices are you prepared to make in order to unify the country, in order to bring in the North, are you willing to pay higher taxes, for instance, to help the North with its infrastructure, with its schools, with its hospitals, with those kinds of things that have been crumbling for some time? Most South Koreans say that they do not want to do that they're not prepared to make those kind of sacrifices. So there's a lot of details that still need to be worked out. This is far, far from a unified North and South Korea, although it may well be, in hindsight, may well be looked at as, a very small step towards that.
So much to discuss here. That is all the time we have on CBC News Network, but this conversation is far from over. It continues on the CBC News Facebook page and on YouTube. Saša will continue to answer your questions about the political climate and diplomacy happening in North and South Korea in light of the Olympic Winter Games. So to keep watching, just head over to facebook.com/CBC News or youtube.com/CBC News. Ahead of Friday's opening ceremony, organizers of the Olympic Winter Games are battling what appears to be an outbreak of norovirus. Tashana Reid joins us with more. Tashana, this outbreak sounds pretty serious. What do we know?
Well, that's right, Asha, and organizers are taking this very seriously. They've actually quarantined 1,200 of their security staff, and that comes after about more than 40 of their staff members, security staff members, complained
to North Korea, even through back channels very much for months now, while all of this has been escalating. So, with that previous question about is this going to lead to a unified North and South Korea, certainly the Americans are going to have to be involved if it is going to progress in that direction. At the moment, they are not, although U.S. Vice President Mike Pence is supposed to be here for the opening games, and he hasn't ruled out talking to North Korean representatives while he is here. So if that happens, that would be really a first at that level. Yep.
So we're clear on Newsnet.
Okay, that's good. All right, so we had some audio problems with Newsnet, but hopefully we won't now. Hi, thanks for sticking around. We're going to continue answering your questions on Facebook, on the internet. I'm getting those questions here. I'm going to have to read them, so if I'm looking down, that's why I'm doing that. This is going to be on Facebook and on YouTube, so if you can go over there, that would be great. My name is Saša Petricic. I'm the CBC's Asia correspondent, and I've been watching what's been going on here between North and South Korea, between North Korea and the United States for really the past 2 years now, as it has all escalated. And, it got to a really, really tense point. And then all of a sudden, the Olympic Games jumped in, or I guess came along in terms of the scheduling, and threw a bit of a curve in terms of the diplomacy and all of this. So if you have any questions, please pass them along, and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, so I'm reading a question from Harry Tomades. What's the mood of the South Korean athletes now that they have to team up with the Northerners? That's a very good question. you know, the only ones that actually have to team up are the women's hockey players. We have heard that they are quite disappointed. The head coach of that women's hockey team, the Korean women's hockey team, is actually a Canadian, Sarah Murray. And she has been talking about how the players are feeling. The players themselves, as far as I know, they have not spoken to any media, even local media here. As far as I understand, they're not even allowed to. And Sarah Murray has come out and said, you know, I have been telling the players, look, this is not a great situation. We're not happy about the fact that suddenly all of these players from the North are being pushed onto us. We suddenly have to integrate them somehow. We've been training together for years now, trying to come up with a cohesive squad. This is not a country with a long tradition of winning women's hockey games, or even men's hockey games for that matter. You know, they had a real uphill battle to start with, and now they get this curve thrown at them at the last minute. A lot of people were upset about that, and the players themselves. But Sarah Murray said, you know, I've told them that they have to just simply accept this. Don't gripe about it. Don't complain about it, because it'll just make you feel bad, and then you'll play bad. They did, in fact, have an exhibition game, the women's hockey team against Sweden a couple of nights ago. The Swedes dominated. The Swedes won 3-1. You know, it was not a stellar performance, but it was a performance, and we'll see whether this team is able to progress beyond the first round of the Olympics. Okay, next one. Dan Scanlon Jolliffe asks, okay, what messages are the Korean public, both North and South, receiving from their respective governments, and with both countries coming together? You know, it's always difficult to know exactly what is being said in the North. I'm sure that that they are being, you know, that the propaganda machine up there, I've been there, I've seen it in action. It is very sophisticated. I'm sure it is churning out very positive messages. Today, in fact, though, actually, we had a continuation of the North sending very nasty messages to the United States, but on another track, they are very positive about the games here. The North Koreans have already started arriving, and I'm sure that is getting very positive coverage. And I'm sure that that the North is presenting themselves as being as important as South Korea in these games to their own people. Here in South Korea, what is the message? Well, I think the government is really trying very hard to get South Koreans on board, because frankly, they're not. You know, the government here was expecting, the president, Moon Jae-in, was expecting that these were going to turn into his Peace Olympics, and that the whole country was going to rally behind him and welcome North Korea, and that it'll be one big happy family, quite literally. That has not happened. In fact, today, as some of the North Koreans arrived by ferry, there were protests there. There have been protests in downtown Seoul. There have been flag burnings and people making fun of and tearing up pictures of Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea. All of that is not what the government here wanted. So now they are sending out these messages that really we've got to get on board, we've got to welcome the world, and we've got to put the best face forward. But I'm not sure that message is going to get through. Next question. Thomas A. Smith. What's happening with, is this happening with the blessing of Kim Jong-un, and will he make a statement? Yes, this is happening with the blessing of Kim Jong-un. It would be impossible for it to happen without his blessing, because in North Korea nothing does. So clearly he has decided that that North Korea is going to participate, that North Korea wants to be part of this world event, and for whatever reasons he has. At the beginning of the year, near January 1st, he made a speech and he sort of laid out the future. And of course, there were threats against the United States, and he was railing against them. And there were vows that they will continue with their nuclear missile program. But among other things, there was a sense in that speech that the international sanctions, the economic sanctions that have been thrown at North Korea to try to get it to change its ways, that they are actually really starting to bite now. That especially the ban on shipping oil and other fuel to North Korea is really having an impact on the economy and arguably on people themselves too, maybe even on the leadership. And it looked like North Korean leader Kim Jong-un actually was going to, that he needed to do something that was going to change the game, and that this is what he decided to do. It may be a negotiating tactic. It may be genuine. We don't know that. In fact, whether he himself will actually speak in the North, he's not coming here. Whether he'll speak in the North while this is all going on is not clear either. There is supposed to be a big military parade by the North on the eve of the Olympics, which is a little bit strange and sends mixed signals. But it's not clear that he's actually going to speak at that. I was at another military parade in North Korea last year, and he didn't actually say a word. He stood there, he waved, some of his top officials spoke, and in this case, he is sending a very high-level official, arguably the next in line to him down here for the games, but he's not coming. Next question, Ivan Al. Is there a chance the North Korean athletes might defect? I guess there's always a chance. I would expect that they are being very, very closely watched. I would expect that they're not going to be by themselves very long, if ever. If you look at the example, for instance, of the two figure skaters who did actually qualify for the games here, they are here, and they've been doing the rounds of international competition for some time now. By all accounts, they are always, always, always accompanied by minders, and someone is always with them. They don't really have a chance to just wander off by themselves. I would be very surprised if North Korean athletes had the opportunity to defect. Whether they want to or not is a different question. Vincent Foxtrot. Okay, has the U.S. government said anything about this topic? Yes, the U.S. government has. Donald Trump, U.S. President Donald Trump, has said that, in kind of one of his offhand remarks, he said, the North is being very difficult, but at the same time, maybe this is going to be an opening. That maybe something good will happen out of this. Not clear what he has in mind. Also, as I mentioned, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence is going to be coming here to represent the United States at the opening ceremonies, and he said that he's not ruling out talking to someone from North Korea while he is here. If that were to happen, that would actually be the first time there's been any kind of high-level contact between the two countries in a very long time. These would not be negotiations by any means, but just the fact that they would talk to one another would be seen, I think, by the international community as a huge step forward, because right now they're just, shooting insults at each other and occasionally a test missile too. So it's not a good situation, but the U.S. has not rejected all of this, these overtures, which are really more the doing of South Korea, but the U.S. seems to be on board, at least for now. Brian Logan, will North Korea allow Western reporting of the Olympics into North Korea? I would be, well, I don't know if it would be Western reporting. North Korea is actually sending a fairly large delegation of media, of journalists down here as part of this group that is crossing the border, has crossed the border, and will be in the next few days. There are diplomats, there are other government representatives, there are athletes, there are jugglers and dancers and cheerers on and singers and all kinds of people. And among that, there are more than 100 journalists who are being sent down. Obviously, these are state journalists. Some of them will work for TV or for newspapers. And I expect that they will be sending back regular reports on what's going on, probably quite glowing reports about how the North is being received here. And so I don't think the North will have to rely on Western coverage. I don't think that they would be letting that in any case, but they're not in a position where they have to. Tara Isinor says, or asks, is there any pressure from families split between the two countries to broker some kind of exchange or peace to allow these families to reunite in the spirit of the games? Well, your question sounds a lot like what the South Koreans have been saying, including South Korean President Moon Jae-in. They have tried to get a sort of a mass reunion of these split families in negotiations with North Korea, with limited success. There have been some who have actually crossed the border. There is a sort of a reception center that's right in the DMZ. And so there has been some contact, but certainly not nearly the kind of reunion that we think of when we think of, families actually being able to get together. We're talking about brief contact, which happens, at the border with no guarantee and really very little likelihood that it's going to continue. That contact is going to continue over time. So these are very, very small snippets of reunions that are being allowed at the moment. Nothing on a whole, on a big level. I don't expect that's going to happen anytime soon. Although, as I say, it does happen regularly on a very low level, but I don't expect the big reunion to happen for some time now. That's one of these big issues that still needs to be dealt with. Also, frankly, I think it's one that often the North plays politics with, and they know the value of withholding that kind of contact, so they try to get other things from the South in terms of concessions in order to give that. And so far, they haven't really come to an overall agreement. Sandra Joyce. Have the North Korean athletes been properly monitored for doping? If so, can the sources of this monitoring be trusted? That is a very good question. I don't know the answer to that one. I'm not actually at the Olympics themselves, so I have not been speaking to those officials. I don't know. I expect that they would be probably monitored in the same way that everybody is monitored at the games themselves by international doctors, but what's happened before, I really don't know. That whole process of getting them to the games was really many shortcuts to that. There were really only that one figure skating pair actually qualified to be at the Olympics. No other North Korean athlete qualified. So there hasn't really even been a process for getting these athletes here that is anything like what everybody else goes through. Canadian athletes, there are competitions for years and months beforehand, and they have to qualify, and it's a matter of it's really nail biting. But for the North, a lot of these rules were changed because the International Olympic Committee wanted these athletes here. They wanted to make a point that there was going to be peace. And also they wanted to protect the Olympics from possible attack from the North, from any kind of military action, and they felt the best way to do that was to have the athletes here. So they bent over backwards to get the athletes to participate and to get them into the games. Diane Scanlon Jolliffe asks, is the Korean stock market affected by the Olympics? The Olympics themselves, I don't think so. There's no real evidence of that. I think, if there was a sign that this was going to turn into some kind of long-term peace, well, then I suppose so. But I think it's very difficult to draw a direct line between what's happening with the stock market here. It's been going up and down. I don't think that I don't know. I don't think you could make that connection. And then there's another question from Diane. Is the story of the move to have both North and South Korea overpowering the other athletes attending the games and their stories? That's a good question. I think probably that's something that my colleagues who are actually at the Olympics could probably tell you better. Certainly both stories are being told on Korean television and in the newspapers here. There are stories about the Olympic Games. Of course, the athletes they are focusing on are mostly the Korean athletes, as you might imagine. But yeah, I was watching TV today here, and you know, they've already started rerunning races from you know, pictures of races from Sochi and from previous Winter Olympics, just to sort of say, okay, these are the teams that that South Korea is going to have to really beat if they're going to get medals. I'm talking about women's speed skaters, for instance, from Canada, as one of the teams that the speed skaters from Korea are going to have to beat. The speed skaters here, the women especially, have been very, very good. They're very highly ranked. So these are the kind of conversations that are going on. And then parallel to that is the political conversation, which is a whole other thing, and really is related more to the ongoing conversation about what are we going to do with a problem like North Korea. Vincent Foxtrot, is North Korea holding a military parade on the eve of the Olympics? If so, why? Well, yes, they are. By all accounts, they are holding a military parade the day before the opening ceremonies, which seems a bit weird. But the excuse they have given is that this is a long-standing military anniversary, the founding of the military in North Korea, and all they're doing is they're celebrating it. Well, you know, they don't celebrate it every year, so there's something special about this year. So what's the message they're trying to send out? They're saying it's a normal event, but really, I think most observers would say that they're trying to send the dual message, that part of it is to say, yes, we're participating in the games and we want to be part of the international community, et cetera, but there's an edge to this and we are not going to be taken advantage of. We are still going to continue with our military preparations. That parade is probably directed, the message from the parade is probably directed more at the United States, whereas everything else is directed, I guess, at the rest of the world. So dual messages for sure. And but you know, the definitive answer on why they're doing it is part of their strategy, which we're not privy to. And it looks like that was the last question that we have. Thank you very much for asking. Thanks for watching along. It's going to be really interesting, I think, over the next 3 weeks to look at what impact this participation is going to have. What is the nature of the participation? Will North Korea really overshadow everything else that's going on here? Will they be able to use these games as a propaganda effort? Or despite all their efforts, whether that's going to be shoved aside as people focus more on the you know, gold, silver, and bronze that are being given to the athletes themselves, who have been working very hard to get to these games, and that's been their goal for much longer than it's been the goal of North Korea to be at the games. Thank you very much. I'm Saša Petricic, the Asia correspondent for CBC, and I'll have more stories for you in the coming weeks.